Hello, all. Welcome back to the To Be podcast. I'm your host, Kyle Curran. We are on episode 11, and I have a beautiful friend of mine, Lydia, joining me today. How are you?
I'm good. Good to see you, Kyle.
Good to see you. It's been a minute.
Oh yeah, probably about a year actually. I
Has
think
it?
the last time I saw you was at a Christmas barbecue,
Oh shit, it's been
a
a year.
ripple.
Wow,
Yeah.
up in Sunny Coast. Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
Wow, okay, cool. I know, like we connected. I think we connected at Cool to Be Conscious in the Sunny Coast one time.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember the day.
I Yeah, and then we roll around, we connected the ripple effect, which is quite fascinating. I didn't realize until
Yeah.
we connected again on the Sunny Coast barbecue that we were actually, we came before, and then we've just it's been chatting ever since, and it's cool. And
Yeah.
and I know you're very one of your I love your stories sometimes because you're always with the birds, you're always with the parrot, the animals, and the
Yeah. So I live on the Sunshine Coast and I've got this annual pass to a place called Bird World at Milady Botanic Gardens. And so I go there like once or twice a week because all the parrots there have become my friends. And so I love going up there and connecting with them and they just like warm my heart so much. So I just went this afternoon.
course, that's why you're in such a joyful state. It's always a pleasant moment when you're connecting with animals and everything in nature and life and everything else. So tell me, I know you've you shared some of your story, like some of your story, and I know I haven't really connected on that depth with you, like in
Yeah.
regard to your journey of healing, as they say, or where you've come
Mhm.
from, where you've gone, where you are now. So in like what would like describe the listeners, like who is Lydia? Who is Lydia?
Yeah. Well, to start with, she's 34 years old, um, born and bred on the sunny coast. Yeah, so I think if you know me on the outside, I think I've always come across as this really kind of bubbly, positive kind of person. And don't get me wrong, I am that. But I have actually been through a lot of stuff in my life, and so it's taken me a while. But now I try to be a lot more authentic. But Probably the biggest theme of my life struggle has been me struggling with OCD or obsessive compulsive disorder,
Hmm.
probably since I was about 5 years old.
Hmm.
Yeah. Uh, Along with that, a bit of trauma um, and sometimes I get a bit depressed, but that's not a constant thing, which is good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, everyone goes through different struggles. It's part of life, and I know that for me personally, I can be very OCD myself, but there's also an aspect of some of us have that from potential younger age, like it gets conditioned sometimes as well. So when you say
Yeah.
OCD and depression, how do you how do you get yourself out of that situation? Like, what is something that you have
Mm.
found that helps you tremendously? I'm assuming I think I know already one of them is, but you can
Yeah.
just
Okay. Well, actually, could I, sorry, I don't mean to be asking you questions, but I was just wondering what you mean when you say you're a little bit OCD, because I was wondering if we have the same
I
kind of.
don't I think like obsessive compulsive, like it's just sometimes I can be in that space, like being like
Mhm.
really rigid in what I'm doing, like doing certain things a
Yeah,
certain
right.
way, very con
Yeah.
like very controlled, but that just comes with different aspects, and I'm aware of it. But there's also been moments where I know when to catch it.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, nice, nice. The reason I asked that was because a lot of people, casually throw in the term like, I'm so OCD or oh, she's so OCD. But normally they don't really know what they're talking about. Um, so I'm not saying that's the case with you because I don't actually know your story, but yeah, often when people think of OCD, they think of like someone who's like a neat freak, someone who's really orderly and can't stand to have things out of place. Also, that there's another thing about how they hate germs, which is often true with people with OCD, and wash their hands all the time. But I think often when people say, "Oh, I'm so OCD," or "They're so OCD," and what they mean is I'm a neat freak, it's not actually the right thing, because
Okay.
OCD is actually something quite different. And although those traits can be sometimes true, that's sometimes the tip of the iceberg. And there's a whole lot of other stuff that it's like, what? That was OCD?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, please, I'd be happy to, if you just want to briefly like define like what's the technical moral around OCD, because I like to learn new things. That's quite interesting you say that.
Yeah. So OCD, it's called obsessive compulsive disorder. So there's obsessions, something that the brain is kind of stuck on and obsessed about.
Mhm.
These aren't pleasant kind of obsessions. It's more like things that are irritating and you just can't get out of your mind. And then there's also compulsions, which is the behaviors that we do to try and take away the anxiety that comes from the obsessions.
Mhm.
Yeah, and actually those compulsions can be either physical behaviors or mental rituals. So things we try and do in our mind.
Ah, okay.
Uh,
That's interesting. Because I think myself, I can like the behavior is like I'm aware of it as like buying food, but I don't really actually want the food or need the food. I'll just buy it because I like it's just a
yeah,
keep
it's like a
because
compulsion.
it's a compulsion thing that I'm doing, and it's like,
Yeah,
oh, but I'm now catching myself. I'm now trying to break that.
yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a good context in regards to, and then obsessive is like, are you talking like obsessive is when you, it's like different things in your brain and different, when you say obsessive, like when you're obsessed about something that's got to be done a certain way.
It's like something you can't stop thinking about.
Okay.
So it's like you might want to focus on another part of life, but your brain just keeps being like, no, back to this idea. So sorry, I'm not being very specific, but would it be okay if I can share some of the main themes that people like me with OCD deal with?
Of course.
The themes, yeah, thank you. So I think so there are the contamination themes where people are afraid of germs and are constantly washing their hands, afraid of getting sick. And then there is symmetry and order. That can be another part of it.
Mhm.
But then there's also these more kind of taboo themes like harm or sexual kind of intrusive thoughts. So, so harm OCD kind of goes into you might get intrusive thoughts, which is unwanted thoughts about like stabbing someone or murdering someone or afraid that you're going to murder someone when that is the last thing in the world that you would actually want to do, or sexual intrusive thoughts. So that can be, yeah, that was probably the lowest point in my life when I started getting sexually intrusive thoughts and I was like, what is going on with me?
Mm,
Because to me, my like, I don't know, I always valued kind of like being sexually pure in my mind and not letting my mind go bad places sexually. But then when I was about 22, I started getting these thoughts about, am I a pedophile? So I started to get thoughts that maybe I'm a pedophile, and unfortunately these intrusive thoughts would come into my mind, and things I didn't want to think about, but the more I tried not to think about it, the more they would come and haunt me. So I think that's probably the most like, I guess that's probably one of the most shocking kind of themes that people are like, hey, wait, that's OCD too. Yeah, it is. I didn't find that out until a few years later. But then other people can get relationship OCD, where they're obsessed about their romantic relationship, afraid that maybe this partner isn't the right one for them. Am I attracted to them enough? Then you can get existential themed OCD, where you're afraid of like, is this is this just a simulation? Is it like, am I in like the Matrix and that my reality isn't my reality? Or religious OCD and scrupulosity, which I've struggled with heaps throughout my life, which is I've been raised as a Christian, but for me, my OCD latches onto the Bible, spirituality, and for years I was really afraid that I was going to go to hell. So I spent a lot of energy just trying to make sure that I don't go to hell. Yeah, it was quite tormenting.
That's yeah, I love thank you for sharing it because I feel like that's a really good context in what I know, like because obviously I as far as I was aware when you said at the start, like OCD is
Mhm.
just people say it now I now have a much better education on it.
Yeah.
It's fascinating because I think although this is my belief, I think we
Yeah.
all go through that phase where we have those thoughts. Like
Mm.
like this is my
Mhm.
belief, like whether someone wants to choose to believe or not, it's entirely up to you. This is
Yeah.
my own perception, but I feel everyone, I may pretend to be generalizing that, but there's moments in our lives where we go through those thoughts and we may think we're a pedophile, we may think we're
Mhm.
this, we hate this, but that's because potentially it's the unconscious thoughts we have in our brain. Like because
Yeah.
our brain is 95% of our thoughts are unconscious thoughts with negative emotions, feelings, and experiences, whereas
Mhm.
5% of our brain's conscious. So that's just the unconscious talking to you and it's making it conscious. And potentially we go through those phases in order to allow, and I think you've got to understand why it's coming up,
Yeah.
but also allow yourself to like be aware of it and then do something about it. Like you
Mm.
can't keep, like, it's not good to have those thoughts all the time. And obviously in your
Right.
situation, you're aware of it. You're like, okay, this is not good. I need to do something about it. So what did you do to allow you to overcome your OCD?
Yeah, so for me, I think it's been a long journey, but I think in the end, the best thing that helped for me was ERP therapy. So that stands for exposure and response prevention. And I
Mhm.
ended up doing that mainly with an OCD specialist.
Mhm.
Uh, but so that is actually where you expose yourself to your fears. And
Mhm.
then the response prevention part is where you prevent yourself from doing whatever activity, whether that's physical or mental, that would normally take away your anxiety. So basically, face your fears and then do nothing about it. And don't try and take away that anxiety. Sit with it. And by the way, you don't have to do your scariest fear worse. Like first, sorry, you don't have to go to the scariest fear straight away because that can be a little bit like, okay, I never want to do this again. So you can do it in a very start with something small and then do scarier stuff. But
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean,
I did.
yeah, very, very good point. I mean, you've got to sit with it, but not for too long. I mean, I've learned fear is just fear is just a way of it's just false evidence appearing real. And
Mm-hmm.
whether like you can either embrace the fear, sit with it, but then also allow yourself to move forward with it. Like no,
Yeah,
there's tools you can use. Like you've gone through a therapist. There's people out there that can support you by breaking through those fears
yeah, yeah,
and give you the
absolutely.
right guidance. Because there's so many people in this world that we live in that think there's no one out there. And that was me for so long.
Hmm.
When there's actually
Yeah,
you just got to look for the right people.
yeah, yeah. So no one out there who can help you. Is
Well,
that
it's
what you
just
meant?
when no, it's I think I know I've never I think just knowing who the right people is to turn to and who the right person
Mm-hmm.
is because there's a lot of I can be very I can be so open to people that sometimes it is too open and they can use my kindness and
Mm-hmm.
use it as a way of manipulating me.
Yeah.
Whereas now I'm fully aware of it. Now I'm like I'm fully aware of what people are doing. Now I stand up for myself and I share
Mm-hmm.
my words. Whereas my old self would be like, stay quiet. They don't
Yeah,
care.
right.
Like you're just a person with a disability, like who like they don't care about you. Whereas
Mm.
actually there's so many people that care about you. And it's
Yeah,
just changing that perception of actually reaching out to people and knowing that there's support out there. And you're aware that you
absolutely.
went to someone to find the support.
Yeah,
And unless you ask, you're not going to receive.
that's it. Yeah.
This condensation around, oh, I won't ask, I'll keep it in, and I won't get the answers I didn't. You don't get the answer to the question you didn't ask.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, like, I mean, back in the day when I was struggling with am I a pedophile, like, that was a really hard thing. I'm like, do I talk to anyone about this? Like, but at the time I was actually going to a church and they had a free counseling service. And honestly, the place I was at was like, because like, you know, harming a child sexually is like the last thing I would want to do. And I think the reason my OCD latched onto that is because I really, really care about like not doing that. So, and it's because I didn't want to think about it so much that the thoughts were like, hi, here am I. Hi. Yeah. But yeah, so I was actually concerned that if I didn't talk to someone about this, then, you know, like that was irresponsible, that I could either become this horrible person or that somehow, even if it was through like my own thoughts, that somehow I could cause someone harm, like almost like kind of magically, you know, violate them just through my own thoughts. That's where my mind was at. But I saw the counselors and I talked about what was going on and I was in a lot of tears and they didn't actually know it was OCD. But luckily they were really like they didn't think I was a pedophile. They were unjudgmental and they worked with me. And it took me a few years before I saw my first psychologist. Blurted this out to her right at the end of a session, and she's like, "Okay, okay, thank you for mentioning. We'll talk more next week, right?" I'm like, "Okay," but I came back the next week, and then she kind of revealed to me that perhaps I have OCD, and I'm like, "Oh." And then I realized OCD is not just about like neatness and washing your hands and all that. It can also be about all this other stuff. And I was like, no way. I had no idea.
Mm. And have you,
Mm.
like, just out of curiosity, like, have you, question to ask you, have you gotten down to the root cause of it? Like, do you want, like, have you gotten down to the root cause of why? Because there's a
Mm.
root cause to everything, like why it happened, why it
Yeah.
happened, whether it's through your childhood, there's a root cause to it. Have you gotten down to the root cause?
Well, I'm not sure I have because I think I started getting symptoms of OCD. You know, I can look back at it now, but when I was 5 years old. So I'm not sure that anything big traumatic happened back then. I tend to think it was more just like a kind of genetic predisposition that kind of was triggered. But yeah, I know there's totally different views about that, and who knows?
Yeah, I mean, like, there's like we if you go if you look back generational stuff, like I know I've been through experiences and processes in my own journey and through coaches that I've invested in that when you get back to the root cause, it could be not when you were five, but it could be passed down to you from another
Mm,
generation, from another gene, and you're not actually
yeah,
you don't know where it comes from. That's why I say like
yeah.
there's always a root cause to a problem
Hmm.
passed down to you, whether it's conditioned from your birth or whether it's just something that's ingrained in your nervous system from a previous life.
Yeah. Mm.
And that's
Yeah,
like
I mean,
a topic. Like that's a whole nother topic around like spirituality and
yeah.
previous lives and past generational trauma and
Hmm.
other stuff, all the other stuff that we do in the personal development space.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, so to answer your question, no, I haven't identified the root cause, but I don't think I'm a victim to it either.
Awesome. That's good to hear. Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause I know there's you can either play victim or valor, and
Hmm.
many people that don't understand what that is. So the victim is where you're consciously you're you're always blaming others for your circumstances.
Hmm.
Valor is like when you look in yourself and take ownership of your life and what you're doing, then you can actually realize that everything that you've done in your life is actually comes down to your own self. And
Yeah.
people correct me, whatever your feedback is, correct me on it. I'm just blurting out my thoughts here, but
Hmm.
I used to be someone all the time that was in victim state.
Yeah.
You can make excuses all the time for your life and like, oh, this person did this, so I'm going to do this. But in reality, you're the cause of that situation because we're all a reflection of ourselves.
You're right. Yeah. Yeah, well, like you know, I still think that I have OCD, but I don't see it as my identity. I don't see it as the truest part of myself. I feel like it's something that's kind of in my body, in my brain, but it is not me. And the more I break free from OCD, the more my true self I've become. Um, So I don't think OCD is part of my true essence.
Yeah, in true essence is we're all come down to it, we're all love, like soul. Your soul is
Mm,
state of unconditional love. So unless you if you label something that is yourself, you attach the identity to it. And when you can let go of the identity, that's when you become your true essence.
yeah.
And as you said, it's like you know deep down in your heart that it's not you. And society conditions us sometimes say it is you. Like I know for me personally, with my disease that I've got, with my
Mm-hmm.
I've been conditioned to say I have a disability when in reality
Mm,
it's just been passed down to me, but I've never really let that affect my whole life and what I do. I always give things a crack and go out and do things and not use as an excuse. I used to in the past use as an excuse
yeah.
until I met people in my life that actually allowed me to embrace my full authentic self.
Yeah.
And that's the shock. Like once you go through those moments, those lessons, you won't know what life is about until you've actually gone through those lessons to understand that in essence we are perfect the way we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
No matter what you're
Yeah.
doing, you've got struggles, yes, so is everyone else.
Yeah.
You're not alone. Everyone's got
Absolutely.
their own struggles they're going through. Even the most famous people go through their own self-doubt and all the struggles.
And I feel like sometimes our greatest weaknesses can kind of turn into our greatest strengths.
It's a superpower.
Yeah. Yeah.
100%. Unless you can
Mm,
unless you can see it, or you can't see what you can't see. Other people see
mm-hmm.
it. And that's been a massive lesson for me this year is like a really actually seeing my like knowing my power, but actually seeing other people say what my like seeing my power within me. Now I see it in myself. I
Good.
didn't see it in myself. So now it's like this is my power. I'm gonna use this to every aspect I go.
Yeah.
Whereas your greatest weak, as I said, the greatest weakness can be your biggest strength.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I kind of like people with OCD often struggle with intolerance of uncertainty. And
Uh-huh.
so that's a struggle. I can't tolerate uncertainty. But the way I see it, having OCD can actually allow you to develop a really strong faith muscle, faith as opposed to doubt. Or, yeah, because they often people call OCD the doubting disease or the doubting disorder.
Mhm.
But the way I see it, you can develop a really strong faith muscle because when you do this therapy to overcome OCD, it requires you to take massive leaps of faith
Mhm.
in spite of such mental resistance. And then the more you exercise that muscle, it becomes a really strong thing in that sometimes you do things that and maybe even braver than the average person would because you're used to taking risks.
Yeah, it's very powerful. And faith is
Yeah,
something you've got to have in life. Otherwise, if you don't have faith, yeah, it's not worth living.
yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Not all, there's always hope.
Mm,
No matter what you're going, you always got to remember that there's always hope, there's always light. Even if you're going through your darkest days, there's always hope for whatever you're going through in life. Whatever
mm,
I'm going through, I always remember to myself that there's a purpose in why I'm doing this. There's a purpose in why I'm being the man I am today.
yeah,
It's bigger than myself, and just remembering that. And that's the thing
yeah,
that pushes us through. Sometimes I've lost friends through the dark days, and they've obviously
mm,
couldn't really cope with it anymore. So
yeah,
just know that if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, that having the faith to keep going, no matter what struggle you're going, whether it's OCD, whether it's depression, whether it's anything you're going, whether it's losing a loved one, losing your mum, losing your
mm,
dad, anything at all, there's always a light at the end of the tunnel.
absolutely.
Right people will help you with support. So is
Yeah.
there anything that I know you're very much a free bird doing your thing. Is there anything that you would like to share with the audience in regards to how they can get support if they're going through any OCD issues?
Yeah, yeah, I'd love to. Well, actually, over the last 5 months, actually had the privilege of moderating an OCD support group over Zoom. So I was actually a part of that group for about a year and a half myself, as a participant, and I was going through a lot of my ERP journey and facing my fears and all that. And that group were really there to just cheer me on, and like I felt seen and heard. It was such an amazing community. And then about 5 months ago, I now moderate it every second week, and yeah, it's been one of the most fulfilling things I've ever experienced, being able to help others who understand what it's like to be inside my brain. Yeah.
Cool, awesome.
So yeah, I just wanted to invite anyone who's interested in that, or even if you're like, oh, I didn't know what OCD was, but I'm like, oh, I have some of those traits or some of those intrusive thoughts. If you want to check it out and just ask some questions, um, the support group I run is through the website paywhatyoucanpeersupport.com, and it's the support group is called OCD and Obsessive and Intrusive Thoughts, and most of the people who go there are from the US and Canada, but I'm like this little Australian girl that's like, yeah, let's run the group. So for the US, I think it's Eastern Standard Time. It's 7 p.m. on a Friday night. But for us Aussies who live in the Brisbane time zone, Queensland, it is 10 a.m. on a Saturday morning. So
Awesome. That's cool. That's good.
please feel free. Yeah.
Where can people find you so they can get this information as well?
Yeah, so my Instagram is Lydia Davies _ creative. That's LYDIADAVIES _ creative. Just be warned that you will be bombarded with bird videos.
Yes, you're very creative with your bird videos.
Yeah.
But you have an open inbox for people. So
Yeah, absolutely. And the other great organization is the International OCD Foundation. They're great, and I've got some friends who are involved in that, and they're just a really good source. Yeah.
oh, awesome, awesome. I know you're very creative in other areas of like
Yeah.
creating things, and I've still got your little can thing you made for me, or can.
Oh, yeah. I forgot about that.
Yeah, I've got it in my it's in my car still.
Oh, wow. I make things out of soft drink cans. What was the one I gave you? Like, what
I
kind
think
of,
I
is
picked
it a,
it was I think it was a butterfly or a frog, one of the two.
yes. Yeah. I make a bunch of different animals and also some flowers.
Out of a it was at a I think it was a V can.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Very, very interesting.
That
Well, look,
sounds like me.
I appreciate you coming on. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, and thank you for sharing your story. And I'm sure that anyone listening that it can relate, it will most definitely reach out to you if they want support in those groups. And
Mm.
for those that are listening, thank you again for listening, and please like, share, comment. Key takeaway, stay tuned. We've got more gooey stuff coming with other people coming on the podcast. And again, I'm your host, Kyle, and thank you again, Lydia, for coming on.
Thank you so much, Kyle. See ya.
Bye.